welcome to Living the Authentic Life. I am here with an old friend reconnecting, Julie Lauren. Hello, Julie.
Hi, how are you? I'm so excited and honored to be here. I know we just had some technical difficulties, but I'm so excited.
It's all a part of connection and living the authentic life, right?
Yeah, it makes sense that this happened.
It does. The way it's supposed to happen.
Exactly.
So, Julie and I met way back when I became the Vintage Contessa.
Uh-huh. It's so crazy. So keep going. It's just so crazy that we've known each other so long.
Yes. So I think I knew you even before I branded it. And then we started talking, and you have moved. Well, I just listened to your podcast, 12 times in the last few years. So I can't even figure out where you are. You're in Florida right now. I know that.
Yes, I'm in Florida. I'm in South Florida.
Yeah, but you kept reinventing yourself and you kept coming up with these new, incredible ways to share what you learned through life. And I just feel like that's where so many people in my world are. I just got back from the Forbes Women's Summit and I heard Gwyneth Paltrow, who I haven't been a big fan till I listened to her, but she talked about this metamorphosis. And then when I got your email about your podcast about pivoting and mentally where we take ourselves, I was like, we have to reconnect. So you and I haven't even spoken on the phone in maybe 10 years. And here we are talking live. So,
which I think is so cool that we haven't. I mean, I wish we've kept it more, but it's kind of cool that we haven't spoken in 10 years because now everyone's going to be hearing like this authentic, like beyond authentic conversation because we don't know what's going on with each other's lives.
It is. And so you had this podcast several years ago, I think during COVID, called #Unfiltered. And now your podcast is Living Unscripted. Life Unscripted.
Yes, but exactly. That's the point of it.
And now there's like shows out about people podcasting. Everybody's podcasting in some way, shape, or form, but it's really just about real talk. And let's talk about how you got here and a little bit about what brought you to this metamorphosis in your life.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I'm so excited that we reconnected because when I was like reading over what your podcast is about over the past, little while, I'm like, we have the exact same thing going on. So I feel like it's just really neat that we get to do this. So I started #NoFilter back in 2018, I think it was. And it kind of, took off over time. It, was this slow and steady growth. I've always been a writer. I've, worked with clients and done freelance writing and digital marketing. And I just always loved writing and sharing my story in the hopes that it would inspire others to, live their most authentic life. So I started that podcast. And then, the past year or so, 2 years, I just felt like I'm not as inspired by #NoFilter. And so I started Life Unscripted because I feel like as I've evolved as an adult, as a human, as I've grown and done all the, been doing the work, still doing the work, so is my podcast. And so it's kind of an evolution that's gone along with me. So it's more or less the same topics, but it's a little more, I don't want to say mature. That sounds ridiculous, but it's a little more evolved.
Evolved is exactly the word. And I thought it was great because I just did this. The podcast I listened to, Mental Pivots, Controlling the and Embracing the Real, was, as you said, a summation of several guests that had come together. And so I just created this event with business women. And I first, oddly, I've been in business since 1990, and it was my first only business women event I've hosted. And I wanted to bring women together to talk about what I learned from the Forbes Women's Summit and from going to the summit, the NOMI Summit at the UN, and another event I went to at De Beers. And it was about embracing who we are, where we are, not feeling controlled about these boundaries, and how we inhibit or get rid of all these inhibitors that make us
Mm-hmm.
like we have to live within this. And that's exactly what you're saying too. I like that you talk about messiness because I feel exactly the same way. Like we grow from the messiness. We don't grow
Mm-hmm.
from good things that are happening. And yes, my social media feed is a lot of good things, but people engage with me and Rob because he rolls his eyes at me and he doesn't want to do what the wife is asking. And he's annoyed that I'm pitching bags when he wants to talk about watches. And that's a real relationship. And that's real people that have known each other 20 years.
Oh, oh, yeah. And I think, I think what is, I was talking about this with someone the other day that like, you're not going to grow when things are going like, woo, easy breezy, like everything's great. The growth happens when you're tested. The growth happens when the trigger happens, like, right? Like when the thing sets you off or could set you off, like that's when the growth happens and you're really tested to, seeing, how you've kind of managed and gone through all these, whether it's a mental pivot or a curveball or whatever. But yeah, I mean, look, this is what I talk about in podcasts. Like I had a vision, I think, for my life, as probably a lot of us do. You get married, you have a happy marriage, you never get divorced, you maybe have kids, all these things. And like none of that happened. I got married, but then that all shifted. And, I think when you're then thrown that curveball, it's a matter of how do you, rise up from that and how do you get through that? And that's kind of what's been my sort of journey, if you will, for lack of a less cheesy word, the past several years.
Well, I love that you talk about a mental pivot. I think pivot was overused during COVID,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, that's when mine really started to happen was
Mm-hmm.
this because everyone's life as they knew it stopped, and we had to take time to reflect. And I think
Mm-hmm.
there's so much reflection. And I love that you used to do your podcast with wine because I feel like sometimes like slowing
I would
down.
have it right now.
Exactly. I know. I'm like, oh my God, the next
I'm like,
level.
it's 5 o'clock in 22 minutes.
No kidding. Uh,
Mhm.
but when you are at that crossroad and your life stops and you only put back in, like Danette and I are always joking about like the way we clean. My
Uh-huh.
mom taught me. You take everything out and you only put back in what you want in a
Yeah.
space. And I feel like COVID was kind of that for a lot of people.
It was. And what's so interesting to me, so my divorce actually happened in COVID. Like I literally moved into an apartment because we got separated March 1st and COVID like hit, shit hit the fan. Sorry. Can you curse on your podcast?
We can cuss. You can
Oh, we
say
can do all the things.
anything, girl. Yes, we are living
Okay.
it. Yes.
Great. So that all happened. And then I moved out on my own for the first time in so many years. March, I believe it was first that my lease started. And then my divorce was finalized in June or July of 2020. Like I was in COVID during that. So it was sink or swim, right? Like I had to figure this out. And like I was living on my own during COVID when we're all in quarantine, and it was hard. It was hard. And I think that's been the most, I feel like we hit plateaus in life and, we're growing and growing. And then we're kind of just like, there's a standstill. That was my probably biggest time of growth. And then I would say now where I am in my life is my second biggest in terms of growth, from an emotional, mental standpoint.
And I guess the hardest thing, and I'm seeing this because Bella's going to college next year.
My God.
I
I knew
know,
her when
right?
she was,
Feel
oh my
this big,
God.
right? I know. So, and that I feel like is this time that she's had some health challenges and she's an amazing young woman.
Mm-hmm.
But it's taken a lot of my energy and investment. And there were times where, and I didn't share a lot of that on social media as it was happening because it was too vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
to include other people in her
Mm-hmm.
story. And it was hard because everybody was telling me how to fix it, trying to help. And sometimes you're so overwhelmed that all you can do is wake up and get through whatever you
Mm-hmm.
have that day because you're just
Yep.
taking it in small doses. But I have so many friends that are like figuring out who they are now that they're not a mom full time now, and how do they want to stay married? Do they want to have another
Yep.
career? what does their life look like?
It's, yeah.
So what was kind of what was the catalyst for your second pivot?
Yeah. I think being, I don't know how to word it. Like, I think being tested in ways that I hadn't been before. And, being in a relationship that challenged me in amazing ways, but, or not, but, and it kind of pushed me to think, I don't know, maybe to have a little more empathy, to think differently that I had been thinking before. But I get it. Like we all portray a certain image on social media, and I like to think I'm pretty real on social media, but like, come on, it's
Mhm.
a highlight reel. Like, no one,
Right.
it's a highlight reel. So I think, I don't know. I think it was just kind of like like knowing that I things have just kind of morphed, and like, I don't know, it's just, I honestly think my relationship was the catalyst of it. But it all, it all works out. I just think it's challenging because we see all these things on social media, and I struggle with this, and you scroll and you scroll and you scroll and you're like, oh, this person's on this vacation and this is doing this thing and this isn't a happy marriage and they have 3 kids, and it's a lot, and society makes you feel like you need to follow a certain path, and I hardly followed that path. So I that's my own internal dialogue.
But I love that you said empathy, because I feel like trauma connects people, and even though your trauma isn't my trauma,
Right.
but if you've been through something really hard and found a way to mentally pull yourself out of it and physically pull yourself out of it, that you can connect with other people even if it's
Mm-hmm.
not the same challenge you went through.
100%. I think I've talked about this a million times on my podcast. I think, probably not my book, but in my podcast, like, vulnerability is what, connects people. That's when I feel the closest with people. I did talk about this in my podcast because I was saying how even in
Good.
friendships, not just romantic relationships, like
Yes.
it's a connection point. It's at 38, almost 39 years old, it's more challenging to make new friends, right? But the ones that I do connect the most with is when we're vulnerable. We're not just talking about that life's pretty in this perfect little box with a pink little bow. I mean, life's hard, and you have to embrace that.
Exactly. And I feel I've really connected with that you said in your podcast too, about moving so much and having to create new relationships with people and having
Mm-hmm.
to figure that out. And I call it going deep quick, that you can get
Love that.
through. And then you could still, in the midst of a really serious conversation, go, "Oh, I love those earrings and that bag." And then
Can I buy that bag?
exactly. But I feel like when you have more meaningful conversations, then you can have connection quicker, because you find out where that like-minded feel comes
Mm-hmm.
from. It doesn't even I sometimes even say it's not how we get along with people that makes us feel connected. It's how we figure out when we don't get along.
I love that. That like give me chills. I love that because you wonder why. Like, what is it a trigger for you? Is it projection? Like, what is that?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so true. And I know I worked pre-COVID, so maybe it's been 10 years, but on my relationship with my father,
Mm-hmm.
working with him, having him be my boss for 22 years and my mentor and my father and the person who gave me a check, but I'm expensing things through the company and still needing his approval on so much. It took me a while, like, to not be triggered, and then to not took whatever
Mm-hmm.
that trigger was and insert it in my marriage and go from here to here, when it wasn't the same scenario, but it felt like all those years
Right.
of
Well, because there could be the
projection
littlest thing
brought
that could,
into that one
right.
conversation.
Right. And it can be the littlest, smallest, this moment that triggers you. And it's like you said, it's not the exact situation, but there's something about it that reminds you of it. It's hard. That's hard. Especially, I mean, working with family, that can be very challenging.
And then I left and worked with my husband. So I'm really an intelligent person.
But I always think that's like the dream scenario, right? Like working with your partner, like, I mean, that's the best, right?
Well, in part of the research of coming alive, I fell in love with two ideas that really helped me figure out why I love what I do so much. And one of them
Mhm.
is called Ikigai. Have you heard of Ikigai before?
No, but I feel like I'm going to be into it.
You're going to be really into it. So it's what you're doing. It's when you figure out what you love to do, what you're good at, what the world needs from you, and what you can get paid for, then you reach this state of flow and you can be in it all of the time.
That's the dream. I mean,
Isn't
that's where I think like pure happiness lives, right?
it
Like being able to do
exactly?
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I found out that I do, I mean, I knew all along I love fashion, but what
Mhm.
really makes me come alive is meaningful conversations. And when I can use my platform of fashion to have meaningful conversations,
Mhm.
to have a platform to share, then to take that and add a charity element, use the
Mhm.
empathy aspect, be able to give back to the community.
Mhm.
But it was interesting because my love language was not the same as my husband's. So coming
Right.
to do business together, I grew up with giving back to charity, and that wasn't
Uh,
something that was meaningful to him. And now it is, but it took a process
of
of
course.
understanding that together.
And I think
So
that's so important. I also think like what you do, like, yes, it's fashion and it's, designer things. And sure, it's not like on the surface
on
level. It's
the
like,
yes,
it's all pretty things. However, you are making people feel so good. And you like, I was talking about this the other day, or yesterday, maybe with the guy I'm dating. And I, if I don't feel good on the outside, and I don't mean it in a shallow way, but if I don't feel good on the outside and in my own skin, and I'm not, it's nothing else is working around me. So you are doing, it's not shallow. It's not just on the surface. I think it's a lot deeper.
it is. And I love the guy that um, see from my my microneedling and all therapy and all that. His name is Dr. Chili, and his point is really changes the way. And he said, when you feel better, you should people are more connected to the journey of going through all of these things, to get Botox or to do whatever. And then some people take it to an extreme, but it is about feeling good in in your skin. And sometimes another thing that Danette and I do is we dress for the day. Like if we're having a bad day and we know it's going to be hard, boy, are we going to come dressed and ready for it.
I love
I,
that.
yeah. So sometimes, and then you can shine and you can be, and
Yeah.
sometimes just faking it till you make it. I know when I was working, living the authentic life, I told my speech consultant, I was like, one of my favorite things is fake until you make it. She's like, how does that work, Danae? You're talking about being authentic and you're saying fake it, but I think it's more about what you said in your podcast is you're choosing what to focus on. And even though there's
Exactly.
bad things happening, we're not taking the chaos away. We are choosing the
Right.
gratitude
I
amidst the
love that.
chaos. So
I love that. It's so true though, because what you focus on either becomes your reality, right? Or it's gonna be your own worst enemy. So if you're focusing on that, like great. Like if you know it's gonna be a rough day, but you dress for it and you fake it till you make it. Maybe we need to like coin a different phrase, right? So there's fake
right,
isn't in it because we're like preaching
right.
authenticity. But yes,
Focusing on
that idea.
gratitude, or, right,
Yeah.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
it's your
Yeah.
focus that what you're going to choose for your day versus what you're going to let happen. So for me, it was Eckhart Tolle. Like I loved
Mm,
listening to him talk about
yeah.
like what's physically happening to you. Why are you fearing the future? Why are you feeling shame about the past? And I know
Hmm.
you talk about vulnerability. Of course, Brene
Yeah.
is amazing.
Oh,
She
yeah.
vulnerability. Are there other people that have kind of inspired that?
Yeah, great question. Those are two, I would say, are like two of the
Uh-huh.
top ones. I also think it's like for me, it's a lot of the everyday, like the people in my, like, I don't know Eckhart Tolle in real life. I don't know Brene Brown in real life. I've read all his stuff. I've read all his stuff. It's the people that I'm in contact with like every day. And like, because it almost, not that they're not real and they're not sharing the real stories, but it's knowing these people and knowing like the hard times that they've gone through and how they've gotten through them, whether it's guests on my podcast or, my boyfriend or my best friends, that's kind of what inspires me and what I'm like, God, I wish I admire that so much.
Oh, I love that. And I think a girlfriend of mine who's a former podcast guest, Rosalind Bazell, she spoke at the
Mhm.
Women's Fund last year to young girls about resiliency. And she said, you're a
Mhm.
product of the 5 people that are closest to you. And those
Mhm.
are the people that you are most
Mhm.
affected by. And in Dan Buettner with Blue Zones, he talks about that community. And
Yeah.
even there's the Japanese family, there's a group that they're given at birth. They're called a Moai. And they're a group that kind of help them go through life, that they know that they could never fail. This group would even help them financially. They would be there for them. And
Yeah.
I do think that's a game changer. And what
It,
we're losing with our international world so much is that connection of people. But they don't have to be your family. They can be the people you choose.
right. hmm I think that's everything. And I think it's so true. I absolutely think that, I mean, the people you surround yourself with, at least for me, like, I like to call myself a recovering people pleaser, but, I used to kind of, morph and adapt very easily because of all my moves. Like you mentioned, I'd moved so much. I kind of had to sink or swim, right? Like I had to adapt. And, as I've gotten older and I like to think somewhat wiser, it's about surrounding yourself with those people that inspire you, that, you look up to, that, there's no there's no like toxicity, right? Like that's the key, because then otherwise, I mean, that you're going to bring that into your own life.
Absolutely. And so, how have you worked with keeping people around you've known
Yeah.
forever that you maybe grow with in a different way? Because that's a hard thing for me.
It's hard. I wish I had an answer. I think,
Yeah, tell
I
us,
like I
Julie.
said, I'll tell you what I do. No, again, I've moved a lot. I know people from everywhere I've lived, and I went to 3 different high schools, 3 different colleges. I all the different things. I had a ton of best friends through my ex-husband, and now I'm not friends with them anymore. I think it's just, you kind of got to be true to yourself and honest with yourself and who you are, and learn to, figure out who you are and know that person like so damn well. And then seeing like what's going to not just serve you, because I do believe in, I want to lift other people up and whatever, but you got to put yourself first, because if you don't fill your cup, you're not going to be able to fill anyone else's, right? Whether it's friends, family, boyfriend, girlfriend, kids, whatever it is.
I completely. So, one of the things that you said, I'm trying to get to this on the computer that I loved, because
Oh.
my three, my three things from my research are um, reflection,
Mm-hmm.
connection, and commitment. And I
Uh-huh.
love that you put this in your bio. Julie's commitment to do the work has led her to build a career and community centered around inspiring others to live their most authentic, fulfilled lives, whether through her digital strategy work, podcast, or personal interaction. You
It's so weird hearing things about myself back. Like I had
believe
help with that.
and the
It's so
power
awkward.
of connections and the importance of staying true
Yeah.
to oneself. But it's so good. No, I've never listened
I
to my own
God
podcast
no.
because I can't hear my own voice. I can't, I know, but like this is just so what took me years to come to. Like I hired this speech consultant that trained and worked with Brene Brown's facilitators, all 10 of them. So it was almost like this intense introspective work. And we kept trying to figure out what makes people come alive, what makes them live their best life.
Mm-hmm.
And it is committing to the work. And a lot
It
of
is.
people,
And
they
yeah.
read it, but they're not committed.
No, and it's hard. It's so hard. And like, please, like that bio, like I said, I had help writing that. Like, it's very hard for me to write about myself or talk about myself. However, I do believe that it's like, and you said this when we were going back and forth about the podcast, like, once you find that the crossroads, right, of like your purpose, your passion, and then, yeah, if it makes you money, that's great, right? Like all these things kind of come together. That's where the magic is, right? As cheesy as that sounds, I hate that I said that, but it's true, right? And I think, you know, finding, you know, we're going to be doing the work forever. Maybe some people won't be, but I know I'm going to need to do the work forever because every day something new comes up that
Right.
challenges me. So yeah, I think it's so important. And I think people that kind of put a blind eye to it, or, you know, put those rose colored glasses on, you know, they're doing themselves a disservice more than anything.
Yeah. And the only thing constant is change. And we
Yep.
just have to be completely open to that. Um, and I do think a big part of connection is to be in different places and be able
Mm-hmm.
to see someone else's perspective without judgment. And I feel like
Yeah.
judgment comes in the way of so much because we consider what our route to get where we are is that had to be similar to theirs.
Yeah.
And how could they be so foolish to think that? And when you
Yeah.
really take that lens off and
Mm-hmm.
understand that their journey's different when it comes to politics or religion or the way to be in a relationship with someone else, that just
Mm-hmm.
that other people aren't wrong. They had different journeys.
Exactly. And that's what shaped them. And that's what got them to believe a certain thing. But I do believe this, and I know this. And, you know, if you're able to, and trust me, it's not always easy, like I'm living it, but if you can empathize with the other person or what that other, whatever, that what they're going through, it changes everything. And it's so hard though, when you don't necessarily, or like, I wouldn't do that. I would never do that. Right. And then, okay, but now if
Yeah.
you empathize with them or try to put yourself in their shoes, it's so hard, but it's a game changer.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is to commitment. And I have
Mm-hmm.
said this before, and I've told Rob this to his face. Like a few years ago, I just decided I was going to be with him no matter what. Because sometimes it's hard
Oh.
for strong people to just be together forever and to commit that. And you're not sure how long you can trust, not
Mm-hmm.
trust as in not cheat, but
Sure.
like trust that they have your best interest and trust.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it changed. Like when I looked at every fight, like I'm not getting out of this and I'm not leaving him. So what's the best choice next?
I
Not what
love that.
not what I can prove was right or wrong, but just that. And I think sometimes it just takes that commitment in a marriage,
You're
in
right. And you're right.
in anything.
And I think it's hard, like, especially coming, because you guys have been together. How long have you guys been together?
I think it's 19 years, and and he tells people it's been the 10 best years of his life.
Oh, 9 of them were bad?
Yeah, that's his joke. Yeah.
I get it. I get it. No, it's hard, but it is, you know, and I think that can be the struggle because, you know, I don't want to get too personal, but yes, that's the struggle because you want to wake up and you have to choose that person every day, right? But it can be hard. I mean, right? More than 50% of marriages end in divorce, which is so, so, so sad. But I love your sentiment about it.
I'm not saying- yeah, and I'm divorced. Like I had my redo.
You are?
So the other thing is he looks great compared to my ex-husband. I am. I was married 1 year when I was 30. I decided the next person I dated, I was going to marry. And after 3 months, he proposed. I had a ring at 6 months and we got married at a year. And my best friend from college, who I'm still close with, who lives in New York, she said before I walked down the aisle, I said, I'm not divorcing him. Now, what kind of comment is that what to make before you get married?
I was going to say, I'm like, well, usually you don't want to walk down the aisle, but I love that you commented on it. But that's amazing.
Isn't it crazy?
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm super Catholic. So my mom was like,
Yeah.
oh, you need to go see a priest. And I came back from the priest quick. She's like, so what did Father Agiro say? I go, he said I should move all the money out of my account that I want to keep and I should meet with an attorney right away. She was like, what? the priest said that? I'm like, yes, thank God I went to the right priest. But
Good priest.
exactly. Isn't he cool?
Yeah,
And
he
he was
sounds cool.
with the real person. And he said, God doesn't want you to live like that. You can't live in this place. And so I think it is about boundaries and not accepting anything blindly, but also being willing to make steps forward. So let's talk about let's talk about what you do for businesses, because I think your perspective is really fresh. And I don't think a lot of people are approaching, like most people that come in and look at our social media, the first thing they say is, you need to talk about your products more because you're just talking about who you are. And I'm like, nope, that's not really who
I don't agree. Yeah. Sure, the products are pretty. I remember when we worked on social media together, the products are gorgeous. Who doesn't want the Chanel and the Rolex and the this and the that? It's the person. For me, it's the brand. You're the brand. You're the person. You're the heart and soul behind it. That's what sells it. Like if you know, you can go here, you can go here, you can go here to buy the Rolex or the Chanel, but I'm going to buy from you because it's you. That's that's in my mind.
But tell me about, like, what type of clients do you have? Are you doing more digital now? Tell us about your writing. Like, how
Yes.
do you help companies?
Yeah. So I have my podcast, but separate from that, which is honestly just like a passion project. They make pennies from it. I'm not doing it for the money. I just love doing it and hopefully inspiring others. Yeah. So my clients are a lot of audio mediums. So whether that's radio stations, podcasters, things of that nature. And then also, anyone from real estate agent to lawyer to influencer, really any and all small to medium sized businesses, brands, people. And, I help with their social media, their strategy. I'm very focused on the podcasting world right now in terms of helping build podcasters up just, with my experience and my passion for it. So yeah, but really, it's a lot. I don't really say no. It doesn't matter really what you are, whether you're a real estate agent or a podcaster or a fashion designer, just, the vibe has to be there.
Interesting. So let's talk about podcasting, because my vision for my podcast was, I think we've done 124 of this podcast.
Wow.
70 something with another podcast partner called Styling Social Justice. But I wanted to connect with people and share stories, but I haven't monetized it, and I haven't ever charged to have guests come on and or charge to have ads run. But it's really grown our business in the level that people understand us more. And I think they trust us more. And I think by showing up so many times, that there's a trust in that too. But how would someone, like, what are the reasons people, and how do you get people to listen? I mean, I feel like if I started today, it would be too late. So I'd be too scared to do it. How does someone even start one? Because I have several friends going, I want to start a podcast. How would I do it? Like, I have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people say, it's such a saturated industry, which is true. However, I think there's room for everyone, right? Like you don't have to, Steve Jobs wasn't the first person to create an iPhone. He just did it better, right? Or to create a cell phone. He just did it better. So, it doesn't matter that there's millions and millions and millions of podcasts. What are you sharing? Like, what's your passion? What are you, really, it's the question of like, what are you so passionate about that you can be consistent with this, talking about it weekly?
Yes.
And hopefully sharing, and hopefully adding value to the listener, right? I think it's hard. I think these days when you go into podcasting, like, I want to make money, I want to be the next Joe Rogan, whatever. Sorry, but that's not going to unless you already have a built-in following, it's not happening. Like, or it could take years. So, I think it's figuring out the topic or topics you want to talk about that you're so passionate about and that you want to keep learning about on your own. And also like that, so you can be consistent with it. And what brings value to other people? Like, it's hard because there are so many podcasts out there. And by the way, there's like the hundreds probably that are hashtag no filter now, hundreds that are called Life Unscripted, right? Like who am I? So I don't think it's smart to go into it unless you're already like a massive A-list celebrity, to go into it being like, I just want to make money. Go into it because you're passionate about it, because you're going to make pennies for a while.
But actually, what you're saying is really ikigai. Like you pick what you're passionate
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
that you want to share with the world that makes it better. And I think
Yeah.
that's what it is that, like, in your core, my favorite quote ever is by a guy named Howard Thurman. And he said, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive and go do it, because what the world needs is more people who come alive.
Love that. I saw
Isn't
when you
that
wrote, I was like, it spoke to me on so many levels.
right? So you don't know Howard Thurman, but he was the
Right now.
mentor, Martin Luther King Jr. So he mentored,
Wow.
and so that just tells you like the impact he had on telling someone to follow a passion
Yeah.
or making changes without violence. I mean, he was truly one of the founders of that movement and
Uh,
inspired Emma to go do what he did. So
no, when I saw that quote, I was like, because it's true. Like that's what Matt, like life is so short. Like what, if that's like, if you live your truth and your passion, your authenticity, you're authentic and all of that, that's what'll go out into the universe. Right.
yeah, completely. Well, tell everyone how they can find you. How can they follow you? How can they watch the podcast? How can they hire you to start their podcast?
You're sweet. Thank you. My website's julielauren.com. It was from Prosecco to Plaid. Before that, I've had it since 2011. So you'll find a lot of different things on there, but that's my website. All my social media handles are at by Julie Lauren, BY Julie Lauren. I'm mostly on Instagram and I'm honestly not on there much lately, but I'm there. So, yeah, the end of my podcast is of course Life Unscripted with Julie Lauren on every podcast platform. So I'm everywhere. I just, I'm not so active everywhere.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's truly so incredible. Like it just makes my heart sing in a way to know that we've been on these separate paths doing different things to come back together. And I think that's really interesting because I think there's energies in people and there's passion. And that when you see that in someone and you stay in touch with them, or you just watch their path or like them on Instagram, I think it's incredible to be back here.
No, it's so, and I thank you so for asking me to come on. I'm honored. I love this conversation, and it is really cool. Like we have not really communicated consistently in 10, 15 years. Like it's crazy. So I love what you're doing. I think it's amazing. And next time I'm in Houston, I'm going to come shop your bags and watches. Oh, I was saying, well, after thank you, I was like, and next time I'm in Houston, I'm going to come shop your bags and watches. But it's just so cool. We've known each other so long. And I mean, I have photos in my phone, like when memories pop up on, the iPhone, it's like photos of me, like me taking photos of like the Rolexes you sell or the bags you sell. It's so cool. Yeah. That like we've known each other so long. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, lots of
thank you, Danae.
Okay, guys, thanks for tuning in and catch us next week on Living the Authentic Life. Bye.
Bye.